Egypt's President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has approved a new counter-terrorism law that will increase sentences for terrorist-related crimes. The law also prevents journalists from publishing any detail of a terrorist event which differs from the government's version. For more, I'm joined by Egypt analyst Amro Ali from the University of Sydney. Amro Ali, welcome. These laws seem extremely tough. What's your opinion?
Oh no, they're very tough. I mean, if you read the text of the laws, they look like a thought crime. So there is no definition of what constitutes a militant or what constitutes support. So it opens the net for arresting almost anybody, possibly from liberal academics to Coptic activists to civil society workers to Muslim youth workers. Anything's possible.
Rights groups are, of course, already saying that the legislation is going to be used by the government to crush any dissent. Is this what's likely to happen?
That's very much likely to happen. Those who will be affected most will be the small media outlets in Egypt, which tend to be the independent outlets, because the fine that's stipulated in the law is 85,000 Australian dollars if the law is if the journalist contradicts an official figure. So if 23 militants died, according to a regime source, and the journalist says 33 died, that will incur a fine of $85,000, and that is 500,000 Egyptian pounds, which means the media outlet would close in Egypt. Yeah.
Well, most people are, of course, familiar with the trial of Australian journalist Peter Grester and his Al Jazeera colleagues. I guess in terms of these new laws, are we going to see more journalists potentially going to trial for reporting if it's not in line with what the government wants them to say?
Well, the law previously said that there will be a 2-year sentence, prison sentence, but now that's been reduced to a fine, which still, is enough to cause an outrage and will cause problems with consulates and the international community, because you have a lot of foreign journalists who are very fiercely independent in their style of reporting and would not want to toe the regime line, with the alternative being is to leave Egypt.
What about the international community? Has there been much response so far to this new law?
There hasn't been so far. It's because it was signed last night, but it was being discussed since the assassination of the public prosecutor in June. There is outrage, but it's very muted. It tends to be because the international community is looking at Egypt through the prism of ISIS, because it has caught the world's attention, the toxic horror that's happening in the Middle East because of ISIS. So now we're seeing governments around the world and regimes returning back to realism and seeing stability as a better option for Egypt.
And is international approval something that the President is particularly concerned about at this point in time?
I think with the Sisi regime, it tends to be pathologically obsessed with international approval. And that's why you saw last year with the elections when there hardly anyone turned out, and that was really garnered for an international audience. And so the state media was quite upset about that. The Suez Canal project was another project directed for the international audience. And this is one thing an authoritarian regime like that would crave, is legitimacy.
All right, Amro Ali, thanks so much for your time tonight.
Thank you for having me, Catherine.